Forget the cozy fireplace and wholesome family gatherings. Our ancestors celebrated the winter solstice with toxic chemicals, unhinged gluttony, and home-invading skeletons. You think your modern traditions are special, but you're just repeating a sanitized version of historical madness. The following facts will permanently ruin your innocent view of the holidays forever. Brace yourself. 1. A struggling candy maker decided to spike his seasonal sweets with silver fulminate. He introduced military-grade pyrotechnics to toddlers to move dead inventory. Victorian children craved the sound of actual gunfire at the dinner table. They ripped open colorful paper tubes and triggered live explosive compounds, inches away from the roast beef. He fixed a boring marketing failure by transforming dessert into a minor domestic terrorism incident. The deafening detonation became a mandatory festive thrill. Kids snatched the hidden toys while their parents wiped gunpowder residue off the imported china. This deranged confectioner realized peace and quiet failed to move product. Ear-ringing shockwaves moved product. He turned a quiet winter evening into a battlefield simulation, risking missing fingers for a quick profit. I'm not making this up. Who wants explosives at family dinner? 2. You bury an uncleaned meat sack under a rock for months. Dig it up, bite the bird's head off, and slurp out the rotten juices. Welcome to the Inuit tradition of kiviak. They pack hundreds of whole seabirds inside a greased sealskin, sew it shut, and leave it to fester in the freezing dirt. This nightmarish, rotting Michelin star dessert proves winter survival destroys all culinary boundaries. They don't pluck the feathers. They don't remove the beaks. They let nature brew a pungent sludge inside the carcasses until the holidays arrive. When the time comes, families gather around this fermented corpse balloon. They slice open the blubber casing and extract the liquefied avians one by one. Families turn sucking out the decayed organs into a joyous, festive bonding activity. Extreme climates breed extreme menus. Extreme culinary survival. 3. The world's holiest candy is nothing more than a gravity-defying silencer for annoying kids. Candy canes have zero religious meaning. They started as straight sugar sticks designed to shut up noisy choir boys during long church services. The famous curved hook shape isn't a tribute to Jesus or a shepherd's staff. It's a mechanical upgrade. Choir masters bent the hot sugar so the treats wouldn't fall off the slippery tree branches. They engineered a hook to hang the bribe higher up. People elevated a basic crowd control tool into a sacred emblem. Kids sucked on these peppermint pacifiers, granting the priests enough silence to conduct the mass. Generations of grandmothers spun wild spiritual tales about the red and white stripes. The truth remains a lot more cynical. It's just a functional design tweak, a sweet, sticky lie. 4. Social climbers paid extortionate fees to place a tropical fruit on their dinner table as a decorative wealth display. In colonial times, pineapples cost an absolute fortune. People rented them. You paid a merchant to borrow the spiky orb, showcased it to your jealous neighbors, and returned it the next day without ever taking a single bite. You treated a piece of rotting vegetation as a temporary Rolex. These 18th century aristocrats rented a luxury sports car just to park it in the driveway for a portrait painting. Guests stared at the centerpiece, intimidated by the sheer financial power radiating from the unpeeled rind. To eat the flesh meant destroying the investment. The hosts suffered through a bland meal while staring at a majestic dessert they couldn't afford to consume. Status demands sacrifice. Pathetic fruit obsession. 5. One person kneels on the floor with their eyes covered while everyone else slaps them from behind. Victorians called this hot cockles. They played a parlor game that functioned as sanctioned domestic violence disguised as a festive icebreaker. The victim absorbed blunt force trauma to the back of the head until they guessed the attacker correctly. If you guessed wrong, the beatings continued. This brutal tradition makes modern monopoly disputes look like a meditation retreat. Aunts, uncles, and cousins lined up to strike their blindfolded relatives without any fear of retaliation. They didn't rely on swords, shields, or a premium subscription to a streaming service for entertainment. They used their bare hands. Grandma delivered a devastating right hook and blamed it on the eggnog. Which relative would you slap? 6. Merchants dragged a decorated pine into the town square, drank alarming quantities of alcohol, and set the whole thing on fire. The alleged first Christmas tree in Latvia suffered a brutal, fiery execution. They erected the beautiful evergreen purely to burn it to the ground. These guys rebranded a drunken fraternity bonfire as municipal civic pride. Instead of preserving the ornaments or packing them away in wooden boxes, they chose spontaneous arson. The townspeople gathered to watch the branches turn into a towering, crackling inferno. They cheered as the pine needles ignited and showered the cobblestones with blistering hot embers. This wasn't a cozy gathering around the hearth. It was a chaotic pyrotechnic spectacle fueled by cheap winter booze and relentless boredom. They built a magnificent festive monument just to watch it die. Beautiful, destructive tradition. 7. Santa's sleigh ride originated as a recycled psychedelic drug trip disguised as a children's fable. Arctic shamans fed highly toxic magic mushrooms to reindeer. The animals processed the lethal toxins through their digestive tracts, filtering out the poison but leaving the potent psychoactive hallucinogens intact. The shamans then collected the golden liquid. They drank the glowing reindeer pee to experience mind-bending, out-of-body flying trips. They hallucinated soaring above the snowy tundra in a magical sled. The myth of flying hooves stems directly from locals chugging animal waste loaded with narcotics. You look up at the night sky looking for a jolly fat man, but history points to a hallucinating shaman rolling in the snow. They transformed a dangerous substance abuse habit into a beloved bedtime story. Hallucinogenic holiday origins. 8. Before Halloween claimed the monopoly on horror, families huddled around the fire on the darkest winter nights to genuinely terrify each other into acting virtuous. They told blood-curdling stories of the restless undead. This era functioned as Spooky Season Part 2. You didn't sing cheerful songs about snowmen. You listened to grim fables about rotting corpses emerging from the frost to drag misbehaving relatives into the frozen earth. They designed these narratives to emotionally traumatize you into becoming a productive citizen for the new year. Parents utilized sleep deprivation and psychological dread to keep the household in line. The flickering shadows in the corner of the room held malevolent spirits, not brightly wrapped presents. A chilling ghost story served as the ultimate behavioral correction tool. Fear dictates good manners. 9. Southern Americans lacking fireworks packed blacksmith anvils with black gunpowder and blew them sky high. They built makeshift bombs capable of launching 100-pound chunks of solid iron hundreds of feet into the air. They deemed launching heavy industrial equipment a family-friendly activity. This prehistoric redneck internet content lacked any safety regulations. The heavy metal blocks soared above the treetops and crashed back down, frequently crushing houses, barns, or oblivious spectators. People cheered as shrapnel rained over the festivities. You didn't just watch a pretty light show. You survived an artillery barrage in your own backyard. They preferred the risk of blunt force decapitation over a quiet evening indoors. Nothing screams holiday cheer like dodging a falling meteorite made of cast iron. Would you dodge an anvil? 10. Instead of calling a vet, 18th century farmers wrapped a prayer in dough and shoved it down a cow's throat. They forced sick livestock to eat literal pages torn from the Bible. They assumed digesting holy ink would fix a bovine stomachache. This represents the most hilariously literal interpretation of consuming the Word of God. The farmer rolled up verses from Genesis, coated them in sticky flour, and rammed the paper wad into the chewing jaws of a miserable heifer. They turned sacred texts into chewable aspirin. The paper provided zero nutritional value, yet they stood there waiting for a miraculous recovery. They ignored basic biology and relied on a gastric exorcism to save their farming business. The priest blessed the congregation while the cattle chewed on the psalms. Holy bovine indigestion. 11. The 1980 release of the Rubik's Cube caused a wave of medically documented physical injuries. Kids gave themselves severe repetitive strain injuries in their wrists and thumbs from frantically twisting the plastic blocks. This colorful cube ranks as the only non-sharp, non-toxic toy in history that inflicted both orthopedic damage and extreme emotional rage. Children obsessed over aligning the vibrant colors. They twisted the rigid rows for uninterrupted hours, grinding their joints into dust while weeping in sheer frustration. Emergency rooms reported inflamed tendons directly linked to this geometric torture device. It bypassed physical safety checks and targeted the human nervous system instead. A simple plastic square broke the willpower and the fragile ligaments of an entire generation. Geometric plastic torture. 12. The Pennsylvania Dutch worshipped a gift-bringer who whipped bad children and played sick mind games. Belsnickel became Santa's sadistic cousin, who treated the holidays as a military disciplinary boot camp. He knocked violently on the frozen windows, storming inside to physically beat naughty kids with a wooden switch. Then he threw delicious candy on the floor. If a bleeding child reached for the treats too eagerly, he whipped them again. He turned the living room into a psychological torture chamber. Kids stood trembling, calculating the risk-to-reward ratio of grabbing a peppermint while a madman hovered over them with a stick. You earned your presence through physical endurance and emotional suppression. He taught children that joy always comes with a harsh penalty. Joy requires suffering. 13. Underground believers built optical illusion statues that looked like Buddhist figures to the authorities, but served as secret Virgin Mary idols for forbidden prayers. Under threat of bloody execution in 17th century Japan, these stealth worshippers camouflaged their holiday rituals. They operated a religious stealth mission, right under the noses of armed samurai. If the ruthless guards found a cross, you instantly lost your head. So they carved intricate statues with hidden compartments and deceptive angles. From the front, it showcased a standard local deity. From the back, it revealed a banned holy icon. They whispered their hymns in the dark, dodging strict government patrols and paranoid informants. One misplaced candle meant an immediate death sentence for the entire block. High-stakes holy espionage. 14. A fast food manager convinced an entire nation that greasy fried chicken in a bucket was the authentic, traditional American holiday dinner. The giant Japanese tradition of eating KFC for Christmas stems directly from a corporate lie. He witnessed foreigners searching for turkey and masterminded the most brilliant marketing scam in history. He replaced Jesus with secret herbs and spices. Millions of citizens now wait in freezing lines and place pre-orders months in advance just to acquire a cardboard bucket of deep-fried bird. He essentially hijacked a global holiday using a cartoonish mascot and a deep fryer. The populace worships the Colonel's face as a holy relic. This proves you don't need a centuries-old mythology to build a tradition. You just need a relentless advertising budget and a crispy batter recipe. Commercial victory achieved. 15. King Henry III tied a live polar bear to a thick chain and let it swim in the River Thames to hunt its own fish. He received the majestic beast as a diplomatic gift, but proved too cheap to feed it properly. He turned the bustling medieval river into Europe's most terrifying and unpredictable public swimming pool. Think about that for a second. Londoners trying to wash their rough clothes or navigate small boats suddenly faced a starving apex predator thrashing in the dark current. The king avoided a steep grocery bill by transforming the local waterway into a brutal hunting ground. He tethered a gigantic Arctic killer to the fortress walls and let it ambush unsuspecting salmon. A casual stroll along the muddy riverbank carried the real threat of getting mauled by a misplaced bear. Imagine dodging a polar bear? 16. The Tsar commissioned solid gold, diamond-encrusted eggs containing tiny mechanical toys for millions of dollars. The Russian Romanovs exchanged the most expensive, useless objects in history, while their population actively starved in the frozen streets. These fragile ornaments served zero practical purpose. This extreme sport wealth inequality directly funded the bloody anger of the upcoming revolution. A peasant family chewed on rotten cabbage while the emperor marveled at a miniature ruby train rotating inside an emerald shell. He flaunted a disgusting excess of jewels to entertain his relatives for 5 minutes, before placing the egg on a dusty shelf. The royal family essentially crafted their own glittering tombstones. They prioritized mechanical chickens over feeding their dying citizens. Glittering royal tombstones. 17. Charles Dickens only wrote about frozen snowscapes because he lived through a freak atmospheric anomaly where the River Thames froze solid. The cultural obsession with a snowy white Christmas acts as 19th century weather propaganda. Otherwise, English winters remain mostly just wet, bleak, and relentlessly gray. Modern society spent 2 centuries chasing a holiday aesthetic based solely on a temporary localized climate glitch. We buy aerosol cans of artificial frost and spray our living room windows because one famous author experienced a little ice age during his childhood. He documented a rare meteorological accident, and the entire globe accepted it as the default festive setting. If Dickens lived during a milder decade, our greeting cards would feature muddy puddles and endless drizzle. We idolize a weather error. Did Dickens fake winter? 18. A skeletal puppet snaps its jaws while a roaming gang challenges the homeowner to a rhyming insult contest. The Welsh tradition of Mari Lwyd involves dragging a decorated horse skull to your neighbor's door to extort them. If the homeowner loses the poetry duel, the skeleton gang invades the house to consume all their beer. They rebranded innocent caroling as a terrifying medieval rap battle that legally ends in a home invasion. You hear a heavy knock, open the door, and face a dead equine skull wrapped in festive ribbons. The bone jaw clatters loudly in the freezing air. The men hiding under the white sheet demand your finest alcohol using sharp rhythmic verses. You must fire back with superior rhymes to keep your pantry safe. It tests your vocabulary and your alcohol reserves simultaneously. Fail the rhyme, lose the booze. Could you outrhyme a skull? 19. Bureaucrats mapped out airways and declared a wooden sleigh airworthy, so kids wouldn't worry about arrests for unregistered vehicles. The U.S. government processed official aviation paperwork to issue a pilot's license to Santa in 1927. They handed a mythical Fat Man official clearance to navigate commercial airspace. This wholesome stunt inadvertently implies the Federal Aviation Administration would have to conduct a full crash investigation if the reindeer engine ever failed. Imagine government agents cordoning off a snowy field to inspect shattered candy canes and a damaged red fuselage. They legitimized a fairy tale using federal stamps and bureaucratic red tape. They effectively placed a magical entity under standard tax and transport laws. Nobody escapes federal taxes. 20. Families dumped mountains of industrial-grade carcinogens onto their trees and carpets because it looked pretty. Early 20th century fake snow, famously used in The Wizard of Oz, consisted of deadly asbestos. Manufacturers marketed the fluffy white poison as a fireproof decoration. Parents willingly hotboxed their own living rooms with terminal lung disease just to achieve that perfect winter aesthetic. They sprinkled the toxic fibers over the dining table, let the children roll around in the synthetic dust, and inhaled microscopic blades of death with every breath. The shimmering flakes created a magical atmosphere while silently destroying their respiratory systems. They invited a lethal industrial hazard into their homes and called it a festive miracle. Ignorance was truly fatal. 21. Roaming gangs sang threatening lyrics promising to curse or vandalize the property if the terrified homeowner didn't hand over their highest quality alcohol. Medieval caroling originated as a hostile mob tactic used by angry peasants to squeeze booze from rich neighbors. They deconstructed traditional caroling into a legalized shakedown and adult trick-or-treating backed by the explicit threat of property damage. You didn't invite these boisterous singers inside for a warm cup of winter cocoa. You bribed them to leave your farm intact. They stood on your wooden porch, armed with rusted pitchforks and large drinking mugs, demanding your finest fermented cider. Refusal meant waking up to smashed windows or ruined crops. They leveraged seasonal cheer to run a ruthless neighborhood extortion racket. Pay the liquid ransom. 22. The royal grocery list included 28 entire oxen and 300 sheep slaughtered for a single party. King Richard II hosted a meal so violently enormous it defies modern logic. While average peasants fought in the mud over tiny scraps of bread, the monarch orchestrated a localized extinction event for his guests. Your holiday weight gain is insignificant compared to a king who essentially ate a medium-sized farm. He demanded mountains of roasted flesh to display his absolute dominance over the food supply chain. Cooks worked around the clock, butchering herds of cattle just to fill the endless wooden tables. The sheer volume of animal fat dripping onto the floor could have fueled a small medieval city. The king gorged himself while his kingdom starved outside the castle walls. Could you eat 30 sheep? 23. Kids lovingly feed and blanket a piece of wood for weeks, then violently assault it while singing songs commanding it to defecate candy. Catalonia cherishes a holiday icon known as the pooping log. Children beat it with sticks until it excretes presents. Seriously, This remains the only global event that flawlessly merges animal husbandry, violent extortion, and gastrointestinal mechanics into wholesome family fun. You draw a smiley face on a stump, offer it nuts every night, and then betray its trust by smashing it with a baseball bat. The parents sneak chocolates under the blanket, teaching the youth that physical abuse directly yields sugary rewards. The log absorbs the punishment and deposits the goods on the living room rug. A truly beautiful lesson in resource extraction. Why beat a defecating log? 24. Because 3 gifts were listed, history just lazily assumed it was 3 guys. The Bible never actually states that there were 3 wise men at the Nativity. It could have easily been a crowded party of 20 people splitting the check for the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We destroyed the classic nativity scene by labeling the king's concept as 2,000-year-old historical fan fiction. You place 3 plastic figurines on your mantle every December based on a huge mathematical assumption. The text mentions the items, not the head count. A whole caravan of desert travelers might have showed up, but 3 fit better in a stable diorama. We condensed a potentially giant historical delegation into a tidy, easily marketable trio. Your favorite church display relies on bad math. Math ruins the nativity. 25. Families loved how the shiny silver tinsel didn't tarnish and hung beautifully, ignoring the fact that pets and toddlers were chewing on a potent neurotoxin. For decades, manufacturers produced this elegant tree drape using real toxic lead. We wrapped the ultimate symbol of life and joy in a heavy metal, guaranteed to cause severe brain damage. People draped their living rooms in strands of shiny poison. A cat swatted at the glittering thread, swallowed a piece, and immediately damaged its nervous system. Parents decorated the branches barehanded, absorbing the metallic residue before eating their dinner. The government finally intervened and banned the lethal decorations, ruining the festive sparkle to save millions of brain cells. We traded aesthetic perfection for basic neurological function, sparkly brain damage. 26. Under the old Julian calendar, the man who defined the universe through complex math was born on the exact day we celebrate the light of the world. Hardcore science nerds celebrate December 25th. Not for Jesus, but for the birth of Sir Isaac Newton. You can frame dropping a heavy apple on your relative's head as a factual, budget-friendly alternative to buying an expensive retail gift. They sing carols to the laws of motion and praise the genius who invented calculus. Instead of a star on the tree, they place a glass prism to refract the white light. It strips away the mystical elements of the season and replaces them with cold, hard physics. You don't need faith to believe in gravity. It pulls you down toward the dirt regardless of your daily behavior. Science demands tribute. 27. The Protestant Kirk found the holiday too fun and too Catholic, making it an actual crime to bake a festive pie or skip a day of gloomy factory work. The country of Scotland legally banned Christmas for almost 400 years out of sheer religious stubbornness. They ignored the world's biggest winter party for 4 centuries just to spite the Pope. Scotland secured the title of the ultimate historical Grinch. If local authorities caught you singing a cheerful carol or roasting a special dinner, you faced harsh judicial penalties. Police patrolled the bakeries to ensure no one secretly crafted sweet treats. The state enforced mandatory seasonal misery. They criminalized joy to maintain ideological purity. While the rest of Europe drank wine and exchanged gifts, the Scots sat in the dark, shivering and working double shifts. Would you go to jail for pie? 28. The ancient myth claims an old woman rejected a celestial invite to find baby Jesus because she was too busy sweeping her dusty floor. Italian kids get their presents from an ugly flying witch named La Befana instead of a jolly man in a red suit. Her stubborn obsession with a clean house doomed her to forever wander the earth looking for the Holy Child. This dark cautionary tale warns kids that prioritizing mundane chores over a magical road trip turns you into an immortal hag. She flies on her wooden broomstick, sliding down soot-filled chimneys to leave toys or dark coal. She sweeps the floor before leaving, desperately trying to compensate for her tragic historic mistake. The Italians replaced a cheerful saint with a deeply regretful, stressed-out housekeeper, cursed with eternal life. Keep your room messy. 29. The family can't bathe because a slimy, gasping bottom feeder occupies the porcelain tub. In Eastern Europe, the main festive course is a live carp that lives in the family bathroom for a whole week. The children treat this scaly prisoner as a beloved pet until the father brutally bludgeons it to death on Christmas Eve. They blend poor household hygiene with inevitable childhood trauma to create the perfect recipe for holiday bonding. You brush your teeth while a giant fish splashes around in your dirty bathwater. The kids name the carp, feed it breadcrumbs, and form a deep emotional connection. Then the patriarch walks in with a heavy wooden mallet, shatters the illusion of mercy, and fries their aquatic friend in hot oil. It teaches the youth brutal lessons about the dominant food chain. Never trust a mallet. 30. Hundreds of starving knights had to stand around watching roasted meat get cold until someone rushed out to find a monster or a distressed damsel. King Arthur refused to let anyone eat their holiday dinner until he witnessed a dramatic adventure. He held his entire court's appetite hostage just to satisfy his fragile royal ego. This mythical leader morphed into the worst theater customer in history. The smell of rich gravy tormented his loyal warriors, but no one dared touch a spoon. They waited for a green giant to kick down the door or a bleeding messenger to arrive with grim news. If the kingdom remained peaceful, the knights faced a grueling fast. Arthur prioritized adrenaline over nutrition. He forced his men to hallucinate dragons just to earn a slice of pie. Starvation breeds good entertainment. 31. A cursed ex-knight disguised himself as a scarecrow to satisfy cannibalistic urges, got struck by lightning, and now travels alongside Santa to threaten naughty kids. The Alsace region features a demonic sidekick named Hans Trapp, who genuinely hunted children. Modern coal is a pathetic punishment compared to the threat of being digested by a satanic medieval ghost. If you misbehaved, you didn't lose your screen time. You faced a deranged forest stalker wrapped in straw, dragging chains and demanding fresh meat. He knocked on the door, inspected the terrified children, and reminded them that he used to eat youth for breakfast. Santa hands out the wooden toys while a resurrected cannibal handles the local disciplinary actions. It creates an extremely effective good cop, bad cop dynamic. Prefer coal or cannibalism? 32. In 1992, an engineer sent the phrase "Merry Christmas" to a brick-sized mobile phone. He inadvertently launched a technology that destroyed human attention spans forever. The global texting addiction that ruined modern society began with a simple holiday greeting. We use the very tool to ignore our relatives at the dinner table that started as a polite seasonal wish. He pushed those clunky digital buttons and unleashed a communication plague. Instead of looking at each other, we now stare downward at glowing screens, sending emojis instead of speaking. A message meant to spread joy became the catalyst for endless doom scrolling and terrible posture. The origin of our silent, disconnected modern gatherings traces back to one festive experiment in a laboratory. Smartphones ruined the holidays. Okay, stop. Deep breath. I need to pause the script for a second. We just covered explosive candy, reindeer urine, toxic snow, and a psychotic royal who starved his own knights for fun. My brain is melting trying to process the sheer volume of historical insanity we call a festive holiday. But if I have to crown a supreme champion of this festive nightmare, the winner is glaringly obvious. The pooping log of Catalonia takes the gold medal. Nothing else on this planet so perfectly combines scatological humor with brutal, violent extortion. You beat a decorated piece of firewood until it defecates chocolate. It's a masterpiece of absurdity. I can't top that. Earth has officially reached peak weirdness? But wait, we didn't stop at our own atmosphere. How did we manage to infect the silent, deadly vacuum of space with this exact same nonsense? 33. Astronauts on Gemini 6 incited a genuine UFO panic at NASA just to play jingle bells on a smuggled harmonica. Even when escaping gravity, humanity can't abandon the urge to execute terrible dad joke festive pranks. The holiday spirit isn't about peace. It's a highly contagious, unstoppable virus that survives toxic chemicals, extreme gluttony, and the deadly vacuum of space. Drop into the comments right now and expose your country's most embarrassing tradition as fact 34. I will pin the most unhinged local madness to the top.